Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Municipal Council, a regular public meeting of the Dieppe City Council on this October 26th. With no further delay, I would like to invite my colleagues. Let's have the serenity to accept the things that we can't change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, do we have a quorum? It appears that we do. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared? None have been received. Okay, so for the adoption of the agenda then, Councillor Nolan moves the adoption of the agenda, seconded by Councillor Beliveau. On the question, all in favor? There's no questions. All in favor of the adoption say we. Contrary minded nay. So the agenda is adopted as presented. I would be remiss if I did not mention the presence of a law class from the Université de Moncton, from one of our former colleagues and employees, Maître. So good evening and welcome to the Dieppe City Hall. Now the next item are the presentations, inquiries, and petitions. Understand that Santa Claus might have been here to make a presentation. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Mr. Jean Richard was here to make a presentation to the City Council, Municipal Council. Yes, if I'd known I was going to be addressed as such, I might have worn a different outfit. Your Worship, Mayor Lapierre, Councillor Gaudette, Nolan, Rideau, bien, Beliveau, Thibodeau, Leblanc, and Councillor Dallaire. My name is Jean Richard. I'm here to say a few words tonight as president of the Greater Moncton Santa Claus Parade. I thank you for this opportunity. About 50 years ago, the visionaries in this region envisaged an important event that they would invite all of the population, not just from Dieppe and the surrounding area, but from the three maritime provinces to meet in fraternity, before the Christmas holiday, in preparation for this season, which over the years has become not just the most important pre-Christmas parade in Atlantic Canada, but the third largest one in Canada. The committee, and there's about 25 volunteers on the committee which directs this nonprofit activity, appreciates the continued support of the City of Dieppe and its annual contribution of $5,000. This money allows us every year to improve significantly the organization of this parade, be it for new floats, which include our more recent Joel, a Christmas tree with about 2,000 bulbs, and completely hydraulic. Even the star on top of the tree is hydraulically controlled. But also the dwarfs float, as well as the Mr. and Mrs. Claus parade. But all of those are related to the parade. All this to say that next year this will celebrate its 50th birthday. And we want to mark this event with a special presentation. That's why we're asking you tonight to consider a contribution of $10,000 only for the year 2016. And I would emphasize that, only 2016, so that we can attain our objectives and to delight our clientele, the families and children from this part of the world. Finally, I'd like to profit from this opportunity to say once again that we're very grateful for the contribution that the City of Dieppe makes, as well as the city and its citizens. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Richard. Are there any questions from Council? No? All right, it was very clear. Thank you very much, and good evening. Thanks. So as far as presentations, inquiries, and petitions, inquiries by council members directed at the Kodiak Regional RCMP. Councillor Beliveau. I think we're at the point where you don't have to guess what I'm going to ask. It has to do with the construction zone on Amiro Acadie. People are very impatient. They would like the work to conclude, and I can understand that it will be we'll be glad to get to the end of that sometime this fall. But I've noticed that more and more that the speed people are driving by at 60 and 70 on the new black pavement, and that the respect of the signs on Amiro, starting from the cemetery to the Chartersville intersection, is rarely respected. Cars pass, and the cars seem to travel at 60 or 70 kilometers per hour. So it's one or the other, Your Worship, either that we ask that it be followed more closely, or that we take the signs down, because there are a few who've told me, says, is it really worth to ask somebody to have done that work, because nobody is obeying the signs. So I'm asking again to see if we could maybe pay particular attention to that section of Amiro, and in particular because of the work that is being done by the workers on the streets. I think that people are driving too fast, and I know that they can't always be feeling safe when they see the cars going by at such high speeds. So once again, we ask for one or the other. Thank you, Your Worship. Before asking our RCMP rep to speak, I have heard comments from people who've been stopped. So there is some work being done. Good evening. We're going to continue to increase the patrols in that area to try to get the public to slow down. Thank you. Councillor Nolan, no, it's good. So if that's all, we're going to wish you a good evening. You're welcome to stay, but I know that there are always other priorities elsewhere. So thank you once again for your participation. So a presentation on public transit for the planned improvements, Mr. Richard. Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. The following presentation aims to inform you and the population to the minor changes to the public transit that will come into effect December 15th next. And also, as far as the new bus stops, designated bus stops, a new approach for the entire Greater Moncton area. So for Route 95, those who don't take it, Route 95 starts from Champlain Place, goes on Régis, Acadie, to continue on Amiro and to get to Fox Creek, Melanson, and back. Currently, there are two buses doing the same route that follow each other from Champlain on Acadie. What we're trying to do is to take the 93 and to get it off of that part of the route and to make it turn on Paul Street coming out of Champlain. So it'll turn to the right and then a left on Champlain to come back to Acadie. So that little detour will allow us to better serve our downtown, and also to have an improvement, because often the bus gets caught in traffic at the corner of Acadie and Champlain, particularly at peak traffic times. Now with this new route, they could take the right-hand turn without having to stop at the light. So that's what's being proposed. That's changed in A. So I've explained why and the impact. Now the change B is a suggestion that came when we had consultations in 2013, and that would be to do this route in the reverse direction, the triangle formed by Amiro, Fox Creek, Melanson. So currently it goes to Amiro, turns left on Fox Creek, then left on Melanson, and at right to take Amiro and come back here. The problem is that starting with Melanson on Amiro, there is no sidewalk on the right. Same thing for the rest of that triangle. So by changing the direction around that triangle, it allows the bus that would be turning at left on Melançon from Melançon, where there would be a sidewalk there on the right. On Fox Creek, there's no sidewalk on either side. But what is particular is that now with the changes that were made to the street as far as the lines on it, there's a white line on each side and the same distance on each side. So a passenger, be they on one side or the other, it doesn't really have much significance. And the bus that comes back on Melançon, there'll be a sidewalk on the right all the time. So we can imagine that the safety aspect is improved, certainly in the winter time when there's snow banks. So that's the main reason why we're making that change. The other thing is that there will be fewer left-hand turns, which is more difficult for a long bus. There will just be one rather than two. So we think that that will be an improvement. There'll be a bit of a challenge, and we're evaluating that. The people in Fox Creek, some will have to cross the street from Belfort or elsewhere. So the engineering services has carried out some studies to see if we need a crosswalk, and if so, where. The other consideration that is not a change for the time being, but it's something that we're looking at and exploring a bit. If Route 93 going from Champlain goes, if we go to Ward 1, then it's on Champlain, and the return is coming back on Pascal, turning to the left on Champlain to come back. But for that little section from Pascal going to La France until the medical center, there is no sidewalk on the right there, so the bus doesn't stop. But now what we're looking at is with the improved density on Gauvin, especially with the new apartments there, that there might be an opportunity for the bus to turn left from Pascal onto Gauvin and then turn right on La France to come back on Champlain. So it's something that we're looking at. It's not, the final decision hasn't been made, but the reason, it's the question of density. We'd like to bring the buses where there's a density of population, but right now in the end of Pascal, there's no bus in that section. There's a challenge because it means that the people who use the medical center will have to walk about 450 meters to La France, but that is still within the standards that you will see for our designated bus stops. So that's a summary of the changes. The other, I don't know if you want to have questions now or later. Maybe we'll have questions on that if anybody has any questions. Councillor Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. A question on the changing the direction of that triangle for Emiro Fox Creek. Have you taken into consideration the shuttle service that parks on Marguerite? Yes, that's a good question, because that's one of the improvements as well, because we had some complaints coming from people on Marguerite, especially in the winter, because there was a shuttle that was there and it was a lot harder to transfer the users. But now the transfer would be on the north side, close to the daycare center, much safer, and there's a good place there for the shuttle to park. Where would it park? The shuttle would park by the daycare center. And the daycare center is okay. Yes, we've talked to them, and we have some plans with the improvement of that section of the street is to have a bus shelter there, because there are some bus shelters on 95 now which will need to be moved. The one at the Arthur Leblanc Center as well as the one in front of the church, we'll have to move them, so we were waiting for the work on Fox Creek to have a bus shelter at that place by the daycare. Councillor Nolan. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm disappointed to not see that one has been sent forward, given that it's a community center. We spent millions on it, that we're a city which promotes public transit and physical activity, etc. And now we have a center which eventually we hope will be a complete sports center, so there's no bus going there so that the users could get there. I understand that there's a stop on the Chartersville and Pascal Center, but it's a fairly good hike from there. Just the fact that we spend so much money on that and that we don't have a bus going there, to me, it makes no sense. And I've heard the same thing from many of the users. So if this could be looked at, it would be a good thing, maybe for the next adjustment that's made to the routes. The distance from Pascal in Chartersville to the aquatic center is what, about 300 meters? 400? There is the trail just at the intersection. So if there could be a stop not too far, people could then get the trail to go to the aquatic center. But the problem is in the winter when we can see a few days before the trail is the snows removed, and the fact that it's a gravel and not paved, which makes it harder for people with limited mobility. So we're really talking about a partial sidewalk to encourage people being able to use the bus service, a consideration to take. I might add that with the second section, as far as the designated stops, there's one of the stops on Chartersville, which will be close to the back entrance, so we'd have to check with people at the aquatic center to see whether they removed the snow to get to the entrance, but there is a space there which would probably be the closest to the aquatic center. Mr. Beliveau, that was related to that? Yes. Thank you. Any other questions from council? If not, it's as far as the designated stops, it's a new standard for the 3 communities, so it's a question of safety and improvement of the service and everything. We're going to have designated stops, which means that the bus as of December 15th will only stop at designated bus stops. It's a policy that's been implemented by Kodiak Transit, which of course will apply for Moncton and Riverview. As far as the criteria are concerned, when we evaluated the inventory of our current stops, that's some of the criteria that were used. We want to allow so that people can walk within a reasonable distance. We're talking about 400 to 500 meters distance. Currently, the bus stops, when people pull on the cord or press the button, so sometimes they stop, and there are places that can be a little dangerous, sometimes close to an intersection or in a hill or whatever. The drivers try to be of service, but so it'll be clear to everybody. There are some places that have been identified. We've gone around with the bus drivers and 2 or 3 times that they have suggested with regards to the clients that they have. So you see the consideration that we have. All of the stops do not meet all of these. Sometimes we have some where there's no sidewalk on one side. That's what it is. But as much as possible, we try to make them as safe as possible. What I should say on these stops is that we've had a lot of calls. I don't know if you've had, but we've had people who were angry because we took away a bus stop that was in front of their door, and now we're moving it a little bit further. But with the standards of 400 to 500 meters, it means that if you're in the middle, the furthest you have to walk is 200 meters. So this will allow us to identify where people will gather. And some have been placed because of that, according to the drivers. And sometimes, eventually we might build more bus shelters. So it's part of the growth and development of a public transit system. So you will get some calls, no doubt. We've had one. We're trying to work with people as much as possible and trying to accommodate them. Sometimes people have particular needs. So that's what I wanted to say tonight. The presentation from tonight, we hope will help communicating that. The next steps The Public Works Service is quite involved trying to finalize the installation of these bus stops. It's not just putting a post in the ground. You have to have the services that they check it. It takes a little bit of time, but we're hoping to be ready to go by December 15th. There'll be more communication coming from Kodiak Transit to communicate the improvement of the bus shelters that could go to next year, given the time of year that we're at. And with the study on Fox Creek with the crosswalk, so the changes all coming into effect on December 15th. If you have any questions or concerns, we'll be pleased to listen. Thank you, Madame Dallaire. Thank you, Your Worship. The bus stops, will they be clearly visible for people? And will this be well communicated? And will there be a grace period that if you're standing where you normally do it and it's not a designated stop, where that they would go past? How will that be put into place? Because it's a big change for some people. I can tell you that the drivers already are communicating with their clients. We'll tell them, look, get ready, this is coming. So there's a grace period now, but certainly the drivers will be cooperating with people. If they see somebody who's signaling by the side of the street, they're not going to drive by. But if it's the same period who does it 2 or 3 times in a row, then they might have to find another way to travel. People will have to adapt because the whole system is being improved. But yes, as far as signs are concerned, there are new signs. It's a bus. There's been some good feedback on that. They're very visible, and the drivers are saying because they've got a blue background with a white bus, they're fairly clear even at night. My other question deals with the safety in the evening to walk. Will there be, if it's safe for people to stop close to their residence so it's easier, will there be accommodations? I know that the document made reference to that. That's a good question. First of all, Kodiak Transit has just released 3 new policies on safety, and what it does is it allows people who are on the bus to get out in a safe area, be it at dusk or at night. They will allow that exception because if somebody wants to get out a little bit closer to their home for different safety reasons, or if they see something, that can be done on demand by asking the driver. Thank you. Councillor Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. Comment. When we're going to decide where the bus stops will be in the future, whether we use the same ones or not, is there a reason why we see some bus stops at a crosswalk? It just creates some confusion. I know that it's easier to take the crosswalk and take the bus stop, but I see it regularly at the corner of Robertval and the Rue des Copains. There's a bus stop at the crosswalk, and the people who are waiting for the bus, the people stop on the street because they think that they're waiting to use the crosswalk. I think that we should look at that before putting the bus stops right at the crosswalk because it creates some confusion for the drivers. In fact, the ones that you stop is one that will be moved because it's in an area that isn't safe according to the standards. It's too close to an intersection, so it will be moved. So between here and December 15th, there shouldn't be any. So the bus stops will be moved. For example, the one on La Copain will be on the other side of the street, but further from the intersection. Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you, Mr. Richard, for your presentation. Questions by members of the public? I think we've essentially done that, or we invited Mr. Richard to talk to us. I had jumped over. I jumped directly from 6 to 8. We were so anxious to hear the Santa Claus story, but that's why. Are there any other members of the public who have any questions for members of council? I don't see anybody approaching the mic. So for the adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 13th, adoption is moved by Councillor Leblanc, seconded by Councillor Dallaire. On the question. All in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The minutes of the October 13th meeting are carried as presented. Item number 10, motions, memorandums, and nominations. 10.1 from the administration, Mr. Manasson. Your Worship, good evening, everyone. The first file is to set a date for a public hearing which would be established on November 9th. Next, the topic will be there's an proposed alignment to extend Paul Street, which was lined up until the marsh, until the medical clinic. So with the Dumara project, we realigned where that alignment might take place. In the land swaps, there's an alignment that's identified as a future street, so that be clear and that there be no obstacles to the transfer of the lands. We would like to abolish that future street. So we have to have a public hearing to advise people upon that and to start the process. So that's the date to set the public hearing and to address this issue. First of all, the reading of the resolution. So, Mr. Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council have a hearing on November 9th at Hotel Dieppe in order to hear and to consider the objections relative to the C19, bylaw C19, entitled authorizing the an extension of Paul Street. It aims to permanently close a portion of the extension of Paul Street as outlined as parcel 15A on the map annex to the memorandum dated October 13th, 2015. I so move, Your Worship. Moved by Councillor Brideau, seconded by Councillor Gaudette on the question. No questions? Yes, Mr. Thibodeau. Your Worship, it's a question. When I saw where Rue Paul would come out, it's almost at Regilette Street. For why is it not lined up more directly? Your Worship, it's because we proposed to have a roundabout at that place in the future. So when there's a need and a necessity to add a roundabout, it will be built. We'd have to separate Acadie with the new extension of Paul Street. Okay, thank you. Now I understand. Thank you. If there are no further questions, all in favor signify by saying aye. Against, nay. It's carried as presented. The next item, 10.2, culture, leisure, and community life. You have in front of you policy L9 dealing with the Rotary Park. We have a policy that sets the rental rates for the users of the Rotary Lodge. What's being asked to be considered here is that for all activity by an accredited group which could have registrations and make a profit with the rental, we propose to have a rental rate for those activities. So that summarizes a little bit what the policy, what the amendment we're making to the policy in order to get some revenue as identified in the memorandum. So the revised policy is attached to the policy. So if there are any questions, there are people here who could answer your questions. For the reading of the resolution, Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council repeals policy L9 2012 entitled Rental Rates Rotary Lodge and accepts policy L9 2015 entitled Rental Rates Rotary Lodge. I so move, Your Worship. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Cormier on the question. Councillor Bellevaux. Thank you, Your Worship. My question has to do with page 36, and it's item 4. I just wanted to know clearly, does the Dieppe Rotary Club, will they be charged a fee for the use of the rooms within the Rotary Lodge? No, they will respect the standards for accredited groups. They are a privileged partner based on their contribution, and they will be recognized as such. So if we look at the accredited organizations, there's still a fee that applies. But you're saying that the Rotary Club would be exempt from that? Is that correct? I'm looking at the staff person who's responsible for that. If she would approach the podium. Good evening. Good evening, Your Worship. Yes, with the Rotarians, they would respect the same as the accredited group. So all meetings, training session, etc., would be free. However, for fundraising activities, there would be the minimum cost with the $15. So in your category, would that include social meetings? No, it would be meetings or training. So every other activity, the fees would apply. Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you. If there are no further questions, we're going to vote. All in favor to the change to the new policy, say aye. And against, nay. Resolution is carried as presented. Next item, 10.2.2. As has been presented by Mr. Richard, we have a special visitor November 28th. We're gonna close the streets for a period of time, so it's moved that we get some temporary street closures until Acadie on Champlain, Paul Street for November 28th from 5 p.m. on. And I think that there might be a suggestion to go until 6:30. As the committee had suggested, so I think it's Councillor Nolan who's on the committee suggested it. So if it's 6:30, we just have to change that in the reading of the resolution. So Councillor Nolan, if you wish to read, Council, that Council authorizes the temporary closure of Champlain Street from the southern limits of the city of Dieppe to Acadie Avenue and Paul Street from Champlain Street to the Champlain Place entrance Saturday, November 28, 2015 from 5 p.m. till the end of the Greater Moncton Santa Claus Magenta Parade. Moved by Councillor Nolan and seconded by Councillor Cormier on the question. All in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. 10.2.2 is accepted as presented. 10.2.3, Mr. Melanson. So to apply for Heritage Canada for the Canada Day Program 2016, we have a motion that the CAO would be the signatory for the application. Now for the reading of the resolution, Councillor Cormier, please. Thank you. That Council authorizes the Chief Administrative Officer to sign the Canadian Heritage Funding application for the Celebrate Canada Program 2016 edition. And I so move. Moved by Councillor Cormier, seconded by Councillor Dallaire on the question, Mr. Bellevaux. Thank you, Your Worship. I note that in 2015, the application that was received was for $10,000. Is this are we applying for the same amount in 2016? Yes, it's the same amount. Yes, same thing. Same amount. I just want to bring to your attention, if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me, but I think that in 1946 there were some steps taken to change the name of our municipality to the city of Dieppe. If 1946 is a significant year for the city of Dieppe, so it'll be our 70th anniversary of the decision taken to start the process to change the name, I think finally in 1948. So the reason I raised that is to see whether the $10,000 should not be increased, because I see that it's a significant date, 2016, which marks this 70th anniversary. Maybe I'm going too far ahead of time, but it's just to mention, Your Worship, that $10,000 might be a little bit insignificant given the importance of the date. So I'm just wondered if we would like to try to get an increase in the value up to 15,000, for example, to have a bit more activity in order to recognize this anniversary date. Thank you. I think that it might be something to mention to staff. The resolution simply is just to authorize the CAO, but your comments will be taken into consideration to see if there's a possibility of increasing if the dates are as mentioned. Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Gadet. Thank you, Councillor Béliveau, for having raised this issue. The suggestion has already been made to the staff, and in addition to the moment that I think was in February 2016, it'll be 70 years. It was incorporated as the village of Dieppe. It was the first time it was incorporated because Léger Corner in the past had not been incorporated as a legal entity. So there is that, and there's also the question of the first 4 mayors of the village who don't have their stone at the foot of the tree there, and that, in my view, should be corrected as well. I think that all of the mayors should be commemorated, and the rest can be added. So if we want to increase the amount or the application for funding for next year, I would be in agreement. Thank you. Those who are in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. So the resolution authorizing the signature of the CAO is carried. The next item, 10.3, engineering. It's within the concept of the renovation on the Marais de Coin Acadie. We had identified an expropriation on a piece of land. So tonight, we want the council to authorize payment. It was parcels 15A and 15B, which are in your kit, and that we authorize our legal offices to proceed to make the payment to the landowner. So that's the procedure that we follow for every expropriation. For the reading of the resolution, Councillor LeBlanc. Thank you, Your Worship. That council authorized the payment of $69,400, which represents the offer of the total market value amount of the owner's interests on the properties designated as parcels 15A and 15B, as shown on the expropriation plan number 3494360, filed in the Land Titles Office, New-Brunswick, Westmoreland, which expropriation by the City of Dieppe has been confirmed with the registration of Notice of Expropriation number 350901118 on July 30th, 2015, and that Council authorizes also its legal counsel, McIntyre Finn, to proceed to notify the owner of the payment and payment proposal pursuant to the provisions of the Expropriation Act, and that all required approvals by the City Council be coordinated with the municipal clerk. I so move, Your Worship. Moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Brideau. On the question, Councillor Béliveau. Thank you, Your Worship. I note in the history and context of this that there's a date which will expire on October 28, 2015. So the acceptation have to be done between now and Wednesday. Are we saying that this will come into effect on the 29th? The transaction will take place tomorrow, and everything will be transferred but within the next few days, so the deadline of October 28th will be respected. Thank you. If there are no further questions, all in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion 10.3.1 is accepted as presented. 10.4. Appointments to the Advisory Committee on Accessibility. We have two people, Patrick Brideau and Denis Cormier, for terms that are clearly identified in the resolution. They will, their appointment is effective immediately. Thank you. For the resolution, Councillor Bellevaux. Your Worship, Council appoints the following individuals on the Advisory Committee on Accessibility. Mr. Patrick Brideau for a term ending December 31, 2017, and Mr. Denis Cormier for a term ending December 31st, 2018. I so move. Moved by Councillor Bellevaux, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau on the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. So the resolution is accepted as presented. Items 11, municipal bylaws. Bylaw number Z-9, a bylaw dealing with community planning. We'll proceed with the reading by title and number only. Who has a good voice? Yes. We can. Is anybody prepared to read that? Then I will designate Madame Dallaire. Bylaw number Z-9, bylaw relating to the City of Dieppe Municipal Development Plan. 1. Introduction. 2. Administration and implementation. 3. Safe community. 4. Context and regional cooperation. 5. Management of development. 6. Land use. 6.1 residential section. 6.2 commercial sections. 6.3 industrial section. 6.4 community section. 6.5 downtown section. 6.6 centers for ecological interest. 6.7 the land reserve. 6.8 integrated development. 6.9 sectors with special soils. 7 economic development. 8 urban planning. 9 transportation. 10 services and municipal infrastructure. I so move adoption in second reading, Your Worship. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dallaire, seconded by Councillor Bellevaux. All on the question. So be reading in detail. That's what I understood. All in favor for bylaw Z-9, please signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. So Z-9 is accepted. Its integrity. We'll now proceed with the third and last reading by title only. Bylaw number Z-9, a bylaw relating to the City of Dieppe Municipal Development Plan. I so move adoption in third reading. Moved by Councillor Dallaire, seconded by Councillor Bellevaux. All in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. So bylaw Z-9 is accepted in third and final reading. Now for Z-10, City of Dieppe zoning bylaw. So reading by title and number of article, Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw number Z-10, City of Dieppe zoning bylaw. Part 1, administration and interpretation. Part 2, definitions. Part 3, general. We should go from 1.1, 1.2. Okay, I'll start again. Administration and interpretation. 1.1 field of application. 1.2 zone classification of zones. 1.3 obligation to conform. 1.4 zoning map. 1.5 interpretation of the limits of the zones. 1.6 zones not on the maps. 1.7 permitted uses. 1.8 power of council. 1.9 applications for bylaw change amendments. 1.10 power of the advisory committee. 1.11 power of the planning officer. 1.12 a letter of confirmation of zonage and the related rights. 1.13 interpretation. Part 2 definitions. Part 3 general sections, planning or development permit. 3.1 permit, 3.2 licenses, permits, and conformity with other bylaws. 3.3 connection to the municipal network. 3.4 facade facing the street. 3.5 a moving of buildings. 3.6 a temporary use. 3.7 restoring different areas. 3.8 non-conforming uses. 3.11 number of buildings on the same lot. 3.12 vehicles and auto bodies being used as a principal residence. 3.13 exclusion of the height limitations. 3.14 is special setback. 3.15 setbacks relative to water courses. 3.16 triangle of visibility. 3.17 calculation of the minimum frontage. 3.18 admissible encroachments. 3.19 minimal geodesic elevation. 3.20 obtention of land by a couple. 3.21 building structure and accessory uses. 3.22 fences. 3.23 swimming pools and fences for swimming pools. 3.24 carports and garages. 3.25 prohibited uses in certain yards. 3.26 secondary uses for residential buildings. 3.27 buffer zones and screening required for certain zones. 3.28 development of housing next to sewage treatment plants. 3.29 lighting and signage. 3.30 landscaping standards applicable in residential zones. 3.21 spaces for common areas for multi-family units. 3.32 landscaping for commercial, institutional, or industrial uses. 3.33 exterior storage. 3.24 exterior exhibition uses. 3.36 recycling centers. 3.36 requirements for service stations. 3.37 buses, recreation vehicles, and construction equipment in residential areas. 3.38 requirements for off-street parking. 3.39 access to low-density housing. 3.40 access for commercial, industrial, and other uses. 3.41 requirements relative to loading zones. 3.42 requirements for waiting areas. 3.43 requirements relative to bike parking areas. 3.44 standards for multifamily units outside of the CC zone. 3.45 dissimulation and placement of storage of garbage storage areas. 3.46 height of foundations. 3.47 maximum slope for an access lane. 3.48 leveling and drainage of lot. 3.49 traffic impact study. 3.50 outside wood furnaces. 3.51 conditions applicable to quarries. 3.52 dumping of snow. 3.53 distance from railway. 3.54 charging stations for electric cars. 3.55 garage sales, yard sales. 3.56 windmills. 3.57 telecommunication towers. 3.58 installation of medical marijuana facilities. Article 4 signage. 4.1 signage authorized in all the zones. 4.2 conditions and special standards. 4.3 approval of sign permits. 4.4 portable signs. 4.5 movable signs. 4.6 panels. 4.7 frontage signs. 4.8 is signs on it. Signs. 4.10 banners. 4.11 setback for signs. 4.12 signs for region. 4.13 essentially. 4.14 electric bulletin board. 4.15 non-conforming signs. 4.16 abandoned and illegal signs. 4.17 standards for signs. 4.18 surface size of the signs. 5 residential areas. 5.1, single family dwelling zones R1. 5.2, two family residences R.2, mixed HRM. 5.4, residential zones at medium density R3. 5.5, mixed residential zones high density R4. 5.6, residential zones for mini homes RMM. 5.7, rural residential zone RR. Part 6, commercial zone. 6.1, local commercial zone CL. 6.2, downtown commercial zone CC. 6.3, commercial zone for secondary don't CS. 6.4, commercial area for along the highway CR. 6.5, mixed commercial zone CM. 6.6, commercial zone Champlain East, that's CE. Part 7. Industrial zone. Industrial park IP, hit closer to the mic. 7.2, general industrial zone IG. 7.3, industrial zone for the technology park. Part 8, community zones and open spaces. 8.1, institutional zone 1. 8.2, parks. 8.3, conservation zones, EC. Part 9, rural zones. 9.1, rural zones R1. Part 10, integrated planning zones. 10.1 is integrated planning zone IED. Part 11, exceptions and transitional measures. Part 12, appendix. Appendix A, Dieppe zoning map. Appendix B, parking standards. Appendix C is agreement on a conditional zoning. Appendix D, illustration of recreational vehicles. Appendix E, exemption of example of vehicles allowed in a residential zone. Appendix F, illustration of a bus or SUV, construction equipment, or tractor trailer. I so move, Your Worship. We should add as well 3.9 and 3.10. You skipped over, accidentally I think skipped over 3.9 and 3.10. So we have the motion by Councillor Thibodeau, who kindly agreed to read that lengthy motion to Councillor Brideau's support. So on the question, nobody wants us to repeat it. Councillor Gaudette. Yes, Article 6.2. That's for rezoning the end of Fox Creek on Emiro. What will it be named now? 6.2. I think on page 94 or 96. It's part of the 6 applications for the zone. The projected zone would be R4M. It will become R4M. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there other questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. So bylaw Z10 is accepted or reading in its entirety. And now for the third and final reading by title only. Monsieur Thibodeau, if you have a bit of voice left. Your Worship, I move in adoption and third reading by title only. And the title being bylaw number Z10. Bylaw number Z-10, City of Dieppe zoning bylaw. I so move in third reading by title only. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Brideau. On the question, all in favor say aye, contrary minded nay. Thank you to all, and in particular to our staff and the planning department for this work. It's a lot of work to make all of those changes, and thank you as well to the public for their participation throughout this process, which is an important part of the development of our community. And it's good to see our vision of the future, and also the good work done by our staff. And I thank you. I think I speak on behalf of all of the City Council who needs to deal with this on a regular basis. So thank you for your good work. We'll now move on to bylaw number 9, 26-2014. Bylaw respecting traffic and the proposed modifications. So once again, for a reading in its entirety, Councillor Nolan, Your Worship, should it be 26-2015 as it is in there? Yes. Bylaw number 9, 26-2015, municipal bylaw number 9, dealing with respecting traffic. By title, our section 1 is amended. Section 1 is amended. Section 8 is amended. Section 9 is amended. No. And that's it. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Nolan, seconded by Councillor Dallaire on the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. So before that question, Councillor Leblanc. Just to mention that it was mentioned that we mentioned traffic safety, not, yes, it respects traffic. All in favor signify. All contrary minded nay. So bylaw number 9, 26-2015 is adopted in second reading. Now for the third and final reading by title, once again, Councillor Nolan. Mr. Wood, bylaw number 9, 26-2015, a bylaw and amendment to bylaw number 9 of the municipality of Dieppe respecting traffic. I so move in third reading. Moved by Councillor Nolan, seconded by Councillor Dallaire on the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded nay. Carried as presented. Item 12, notice of motion. The notice of motion. Item 13, inquiries and announcement by members of council. We will start with Councillor Bellevue. Thank you, Your Worship. I will start to show my tie, which has to do with the support group for prostate cancer. Councillor Cormier and I at the lunch last week, there was a good crowd there. It was a full house with this speech, which was very touching, very informative, showing the importance of screening, prostate cancer screening, and encouraging men over 40 to have the test, which is not that bad. It's a blood test. This week as well, Your Worship, it's the International Week for Disarmament and Peace, simply to allow people to reflect on the role that the fact of disarmament, that doing away with weapons of mass destruction. I'm not trying to imitate former President Bush, but also give the reason why we would want to promote it, being and our families and our council and our municipality to promote peace. The last point that I'd like to mention is an inquiry. Has there been any work done on the notice of motion that I gave on September 28th, which had to do with the famous blue bag? Without having the details, have we been able to make any headway on that file? Yes, we're continuing. We have a meeting planned to continue to see what the municipality could do. We even have a video which about this, so we've made some headway on this file, and we'll be coming to council with a report and recommendations. Thank you, Your Worship. That's it. Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. Last week, I attended at the flag raising for the foster families. It's an important cause because there are lots of children who have a need to have a foster family. So I encourage everybody who's in a position to be able to accommodate these foster children to do so. Secondly, today I attended the launch of the section of the Trans-Canada Trail in Sackville, and the Scotiabank announced a donation of $500,000 to build the trail from Sackville to join to the city of Dieppe. And also, we've said that the federal government will match any donations. So it's an amount, there should be an investment of $1 million on that project. Also, tomorrow is the official opening of the FICFA, the International Festival for French Cinema in Acadie. So the official opening will be at the Arts and Culture Center. So I invite everyone to show up. It will be at the official opening is at 11 a.m. tomorrow. I also went to the planting of the Tree of Hope in Dieppe. And I would say that November 2nd is the lighting up of the Tree of Hope at the Oncology Center in Moncton, and I invite the people and the entire population that hears us to come to that event. Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Councillor Thibodeau. Councillor Cormier. Thank you, Your Worship. I would like simply to invite the young and the not so young to be cautious. Halloween is coming up this weekend, and I invite people to be cautious on the streets to try to avoid accidents. Those are my comments. Thank you. I know that normally we have something as far as services. Yes, there's the haunted house at the Boys and Girls Club on Friday night, Saturday afternoon. And the young people who would be the streets can do trick-or-treating until 8 p.m. Thank you for having raised it. Councillor Godet. Yes, I went to Louisiana for the Grand Réveil Acadien 2 weeks ago. I attended the opening at Lake Charles. The city of Dieppe was mentioned, and I had the privilege of introducing the other 5 Dieppe citizens who were at that ceremony at Lake Charles. In addition, on the Tuesday was the exchange with our sister city in Caraclo and the choral group from Caracro. That was quite a surprise for many. It started to the people at the place, and it was fantastic to see the combination of the Nil Michaud choir and the choral group from the Assumption Parish. I had the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of the city of Dieppe and the light one on the Mercredi, which was the largest Wednesday show of their season, as I understand it, and there, Murray Conks invited me to say a few words, and many people came to talk to me afterwards. It was a really interesting time, and with Lauroville and other projects that are underway with Codoville, etc. And I had the opportunity to meet both the Mayor Durel of Lafayette and Mr. Philippe Gustin, Director of Tourism for the area, who always has projects underway, and I will have the opportunity to discuss it with the CAO because Mr. Gustin has a specific project that he'd like to see go forward for next year. So it's always really interesting to be able to visit our cousins from the Acadie of the South. And I was very happy to see that this year for the Grand Réveil, the festival, there were about 300 people from the Acadie of the North who went to Louisiana for this. So they're very happy to welcome us. And many are saying that they will eventually come and visit us. After I got back on Champlain Street, I was sad to see that at the intersection of Champlain, Notre Dame, and Market Street, in my view, in terms of traffic, there could be improvements made. And I throw the challenge to the engineering department to do something that would be more efficient. And finally, Your Worship, it's the poppy season, and I encourage everyone to, as soon as the official launch is made, if it hasn't been, I would encourage everybody to wear the poppy in memory of our veterans, and also to attend the ceremonies that will take place on November 11th at Anna Malenfant School. That's it for today, Your Worship. Thank you. Councillor Dallaire. Thank you, Your Worship. No announcements tonight. Councillor Nolan. Thank you, Your Worship. I just would like to announce that I have made the decision to grow a mustache again in November for Movember, and I would encourage all the other members of council who can do so to join me to shave first. I know that we have a couple of beards around the table, but they could shave those off and then to grow a nice mustache for the month of November, and then perhaps that we could do some fundraising as a team to raise some funds for prostate cancer, men's health. So I encourage you, everyone. Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to mention Halloween, but Councillor Cormier did it. So safety for me is important for our young children. So everybody be advised, and good evening to all. Thank you. Councillor Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. A question that I had on Halloween. Is there a starting time? I know we mentioned that things should wind up by 8 p.m., but is there a start time? The start is 4 p.m. and then the end is at 8 p.m. So this year it's a Saturday. I think that's why the question was asked. So thank you. Thank you. That's it. So good evening to all, and happy Halloween. Drive safely. Thank you to all.